A childhood photo from Busan flashes on screen. Soft focus, shy eyes, the kind of ordinary kid moment nobody expects to turn legendary. Then the time warp hits, hard cut to Jungkook under blinding lights, voice steady, body locked into choreography like gravity doesn't apply to him. The crowd doesn't just sing along, they roar like they're trying to pull him closer through the screen. And here's the thing the then versus now photos don't show. The distance between those two frames isn't just talent, it's pressure. Years of being watched so closely that even the smallest headlines can feel like a trial. Because Jungkook didn't grow up in the spotlight slowly. He stepped into it young, born in 1997, then pulled into the trainee world, while most kids his age were still figuring out who they were supposed to be. And when you become famous that early, the world doesn't just track your music. It tracks your mistakes, your silences, your nights out, your choices, then decides what those choices mean. Tonight, we're tracing the timeline, and I'm planting 3 questions right now. 3 open loops will pay off. First, how did a 2019 car accident, a real-life incident that could have stayed private, turn into a headline that followed him anyway? Second, why did a single outing in 2020 become a lightning rod for outrage, forcing public apologies and changing how people judged idols in a pandemic era? And third, after everything, after global superstardom, after non-stop scrutiny, what does now even mean for Jungkook when the timeline includes a mandatory military pause and a highly anticipated return? This isn't gossip. This is the case file behind the glow-up. Before Jungkook became a name that could fill arenas, he was a kid growing up in Busan, South Korea's coastal city where everything feels in motion. Ships arriving, streets buzzing, people always headed somewhere. And that matters because childhood isn't just where you're born. It's where your instincts are trained. In a place that moves fast, you learn to move with it, or you learn to hold your ground. In the then version of Jungkook, the details people cling to aren't glamorous. They're human. He was born Jungkook on September 1st, 1997, and grew up with his parents and an older brother, already a small family dynamic that shapes you. The youngest watching, copying, trying to catch up, quietly learning how to earn attention without demanding it. And this is where the time warp becomes emotional, because the childhood photos don't show the internal math a kid does when he senses he's built differently. Some kids are loud, some kids are obvious. Jungkook's early vibe, at least the one fans recognize in old clips, is steadier. A kind of contained focus, like he's always taking in the room before he decides where to stand in it. He attended Baekhyang Elementary and Middle School in Busan, normal school days, normal routines. Yet the normal part of his story is exactly what makes the later now so surreal. Because now, there is no normal. Now, every expression becomes a clip. Every silence becomes a theory. Every choice gets translated into meaning by strangers who have never met him. So let's freeze the time warp frame for a second. Then, he's a kid whose world is a few neighborhoods wide, school, home, a circle of people who know him as a person, not a public symbol. Now, he's an icon whose world is measured in algorithms, where a single photo can trend globally before he's even finished taking it. And the most important childhood thread isn't he was destined. It's simpler. He was ready to work. Because whatever you believe about talent, the Jungkook story is still a story about discipline arriving early. The kind of discipline that looks like calm from the outside and feels like pressure from the inside. That's why this chapter ends with the first real cliffhanger of his life, the moment he leaves Busan behind. When he becomes a trainee, he doesn't just change cities, he changes timelines. Leaving Busan wasn't just a move, it was a trade, childhood in exchange for a future you can't fully picture yet. Jungkook arrives in Seoul young enough that the city feels enormous and the stakes feel immediate. This is the trainee crucible, a place where your days blur into practice rooms, mirrors, and repetition so strict it starts to feel like a language. Dance until your body forgets how to be casual. Vocal runs until your throat learns what pain means. Evaluate, correct, repeat. Because in trainee life, good is never the goal. Good is the minimum. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with debuting young. You're surrounded by people, yet your life is unusually private. You can't fully belong to normal school life anymore, but you're not famous yet either. You live in the in-between, training for an audience that doesn't know you exist. And that's where the time warp tension begins to form. Because being the youngest in the room means you're always absorbing pressure from above. Older trainees, older members, older expectations. You learn fast, not because you want to, but because the system doesn't wait for you to catch up. If you slip, you're replaced. If you hesitate, someone else becomes the future. Somewhere inside that tunnel, Jungkook's identity crystallizes into something fans later name for him, an all-rounder. Not because he's perfect, but because he's relentless. He becomes the kind of trainee who doesn't only practice what he's assigned, he practices what he's afraid of. If the weakness is dancing, he dances more. If the weakness is stamina, he runs it until it breaks, then rebuilds it. That mindset becomes a signature later. The quiet competitor who looks calm only because he already fought the battle in rehearsal. Then comes debut, 2013. Suddenly, the in-between ends, and the world starts looking back. BTS doesn't enter the industry as the safe, obvious favorite. They enter as hungry rookies with something to prove. And Jungkook debuts not as a kid, but as a performer expected to carry adult-level scrutiny. This is the moment the timeline speeds up, because once the camera recognizes you, it never really stops. And the closer you get to global attention, the less space you have for normal mistakes. The rise is coming next, but so is the microscope. The nickname didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew in real time, built from evidence. Performance after performance, where Jungkook didn't just hold his part, he expanded the room around him. As BTS's profile rose, so did the scale of what was expected from him. Stronger vocals, sharper dance lines, more stamina, more charisma, more everything. And the wild part is that he kept meeting the demand like it was normal, like the ceiling didn't exist. This is where the time warp becomes addictive, because it's not only a transformation of looks or styling, it's a transformation of presence. Then, a Busan kid learning how to fit inside the world. Now, a global performer who makes the world fit around him. Fans started calling him the Golden Maknae because he looked good at everything. Singing, dancing, even the small details on camera that most people can't teach. Timing, restraint, impact. But the nickname also becomes a trap, because golden sounds like invincible. It encourages people to forget he's human. And when the public forgets you're human, they don't react to you like a person. They react to you like a symbol. They expect perfection, then punish you for failing their private standard. As BTS broke into global mainstream, the audience widened. Different cultures, different rules, different expectations, and Jungkook became one of the faces international media recognized instantly. That recognition is powerful, but it also means your personal life becomes content to people who don't even understand the context of idol culture. Every rumor travels faster because now it travels in multiple languages. Every misstep echoes louder because now it echoes in multiple countries. So the Rise chapter ends with a quiet warning. The higher the fame, the smaller the margin for error. And that's why the next section hits like a switch flip. Because the scandals that follow aren't huge on paper. They're the kind of real-life moments that most normal people would handle privately. But for someone with Jungkook's level of visibility, private is a fantasy. Next, we open the case files, the headlines that tested him, reshaped perception, and taught the world how quickly idol becomes news. Here's where the time warp gets unfair. None of these headlines are career-ending on paper. But in idol life, the size of the incident doesn't matter as much as the speed of judgment. So we're opening the case files the way the internet never does. Claim, context, what's publicly confirmed, what changed after. Case File A. The 2019 car accident headline. Jungkook caused a crash. What else is being hidden? In early November 2019, reports confirmed Jungkook was involved in a traffic accident in Seoul after a traffic violation, colliding with a taxi. Both he and the taxi driver were treated for minor injuries. What's publicly confirmed, police sources cited by major outlets said he was not drunk at the time. His agency acknowledged the accident, described it as his mistake, and the matter was reported as being resolved through agreement with the taxi driver. What changed after? The lesson wasn't Jungkook is reckless. The lesson was more chilling. Even a common human error becomes a global narrative when your name is searchable. And later reports said police referred the case to prosecutors, which kept the story alive longer than the bruises ever did. Case File B. The 2019 dating rumor and the privacy tax. He's secretly dating, photos don't lie. A rumor spread online alongside images, and suddenly Jungkook's private vacation moments were treated like public evidence. What's publicly confirmed? Big Hit acknowledged the person in the images was Jungkook, but denied the dating rumor, explaining he met with acquaintances, including people connected to a tattoo shop, while on Gyeonggi Island, and that his private life had been distorted. The agency also warned about legal action over privacy-compromising behavior. What changed after? This case taught a brutal rule of fame. The public doesn't only want your art, it wants your off-camera life. And when you don't provide it, speculation tries to fill the gap. Even when a rumor is denied, the screenshot often outlives the statement. Case File C. The 2020 Itaewon outing during social distancing. He broke the rules during the pandemic. In 2020, reports said Jungkook visited restaurants and bars in Seoul's Itaewon area in late April during a nationwide social distancing period. What's publicly confirmed? Jungkook publicly apologized, expressing regret to those working hard during COVID-19 and to fans who were affected. Reporting around the incident also stated he was tested after the outing. What changed after? This wasn't just backlash, it was a shift in expectations. The conversation became less about idle mistakes and more about public responsibility, and from that point on, the microscope didn't feel optional, it felt permanent. That's the through line. Jungkook's scandals aren't defined by chaos, they're defined by scale. The bigger he became, the smaller the margin for being human. After the case files, the story could have gone one of two ways: shrink to avoid headlines, or expand until the headlines can't trap you. Jungkook chose expansion, but not the reckless kind, the controlled kind, the "I'm going to show you what I am, not what you assume" kind. His solo era didn't feel like a side quest. It felt like a statement. He wasn't just the youngest member who grew up on camera. He was a full adult artist, building a sound that leaned global and direct, with hooks that didn't need translation and a presence that didn't ask for approval. The golden Maknae label had always implied potential. Solo work turned potential into identity. And here's the time warp contrast that matters. Then, he was trained to be flawless inside a team. Strong, dependable, disciplined, never bigger than the moment. Now, he's allowed to take up space, vocally, visually, emotionally, without explaining himself first. But maturity doesn't mean the microscope disappears. If anything, it gets sharper. The same public that praises confidence can punish it. The same audience that celebrates individuality can call it arrogance. And Jungkook's grown image, tattoos, styling shifts, bolder performance energy, became another place the internet tried to write his story for him. The difference is how he moves through it. Instead of chasing the internet's mood, he seems to treat it like weather. It changes, it passes, and it's not worth building your whole life around. He doesn't have to win every argument. He just has to keep building the work. That's the real reinvention, turning scrutiny into background noise and letting the music do what the headlines can't: last. So when you time warp Jungkook from a Busan kid to a global superstar, the transformation isn't just then versus now looks. It's then versus now survival. Childhood gave him the quiet focus. Training gave him the discipline. BTS gave him the stage, and the world gave him the microscope. The car accident headline proved how fast a normal mistake becomes a global story. The dating rumor showed how privacy gets treated like public property. And the Itaewon backlash revealed a new era where idols aren't only entertainers, they're expected to be symbols of responsibility. Yet the now version of Jungkook isn't defined by those moments. He's defined by what he did after, kept showing up, kept leveling up, and kept turning pressure into performance. That's the real glow-up, learning that you can't control the timeline people invent, but you can control the work you leave behind. Next Time Warp, the childhood detail fans swear predicted his entire golden aura before the world even knew his name.